Victoria, a state known for its diversity, nightlife, great food, and the 12 Apostles. Economically though, Victoria is an absolute powerhouse, with its exports being agriculture, education, and others. But what are those others anyway? And what are the numbers? Let us have a look. Victoria is Australia's biggest exporter of food and fibre products. That includes dairy, horticulture, animal hides, and wool. In the period between 2019 and 2020, the value of food and fibre exports were $14.5 billion. They were impacted by COVID, but they didn't make too significant or long-lasting of an impact. And unlike some other industries, they were able to bounce back quickly. By 2023, food and fibre exports reached $19.6 billion. That's a 35% increase in just a few years since pre-COVID times. The key commodities? Grain at $5.6 billion, meat at $4.5 billion, and wool at $2.3 billion. But let's not forget about education, one of Australia's top service exports, valued at $51 billion in 2024. In Victoria, it was worth $13.7 billion in 2019, experiencing a significant decline when COVID hit. Understandably so, since many Australian universities rely on international students who often make over 50% of their income. Luckily, the education export value has since bounced back to $15.8 billion by 2024. On the flip side, what's Victoria importing? Think fuel, cars, and tech. Fuel imports jumped from $8.1 billion to $9.2 billion between 2019 and 2024, with cars being a whopping $11.8 billion in 2024. But here's a cool fact. Travel can be an import too. Normally you'd think of it as an export, a service that the tourism and hospitality industry are providing to people coming in from overseas. But if we talk about people from the state though, Victorians have spent $17.5 billion travelling domestically and abroad in the 2023 to 2024 time period. Why does Victoria trade the way it does? Three major economic theories help explain it. Number 1. Comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is an economic principle that explains how countries, companies, or individuals can benefit from trade by specializing in the production of goods or services they can produce at a lower opportunity cost than others. Let's explore the following scenario. Let's say Australia can produce 10 tons of beef or 5 cars with the same resources. Meanwhile, Japan can produce only 4 tons of beef, but a whopping 10 cars with the same resources. Australia gives up 0.5 cars for every ton of beef they produce, 5 cars divided by 10 beef. And Japan gives up 2.5 cars for every ton of beef we produce, 10 cars divided by 4 beef. Australia has a comparative advantage in beef. It gives up fewer cars to make beef. Japan has a comparative advantage in cars. It gives up less beef to make cars. Therefore, Australia should specialise in beef and Japan should specialise in cars, and then they can trade, both benefiting by getting more of both goods than if they tried to produce everything themselves. Number 2. Heckscher-Ohlin theory. The Heckscher-Ohlin theory explains international trade based on a country's factor endowments, meaning how much labour, capital, land, and resources a country has. The key thought is that a country will export goods that use its abundant resources intensively and import goods that use its scarce resources intensively. Think back to the previous example. Australia has lots of land and capital, but a smaller population. Meanwhile, Japan has a large labour force, advanced manufacturing technology, but less capital and land. According to the HO theory, Australia will export goods that require capital and land, like wheat, wine, and in our example, beef. Japan, on the other hand, will export us its cars. Each country specialises in producing what it's best equipped to make, based on its resource abundance, and trades for what it's less efficient at producing. Each country will simply satisfy their demand by importing the other good, and everyone is happy. And lastly, number 3, product lifecycle theory. The product lifecycle theory explains how a product's production and trade location changes over time as it moves through 4 main stages: introduction, growth, maturity, and the decline. The key idea is that as a product becomes more widespread and standardized, its production often shifts from developed to developing countries where labor is cheaper and then is exported back to the developed countries. Example: smartphones. Introduction. Smartphones were first developed and produced in developed countries like the USA, e.g. Apple, Motorola. Production was capital-intensive and expensive. Growth. Demand increased. Companies invested in R&D and marketing, and more high-income countries adopted them. Maturity. Smartphones became widespread. Production moved to developing countries like China or Vietnam, where labor costs are lower. Decline. Eventually, new tech replaces old models. Production is phased out or limited to low-cost countries for the remaining demand. So countries that originally exported the product might start importing it later from lower-cost producers and cease production in the country of origin altogether. This theory helps explain why Victoria, or Australia as a whole, imports goods like cars, phones, and electronics, even though some were originally produced here. Now, who's Victoria trading with? Here are the top 5 export partners of 2024 and the value of the exports. China is at the top, mainly buying meat and grain. The US and Japan are strong markets for dairy and fruit. Fun fact, exports to Pakistan more than tripled, and India is now Victoria's biggest buyer in the Southeast Asia. And on the import side, here's the lineup. A lot of similar faces. Think back to the theorems we discussed. You can see a pattern in what we export compared to what we import. China and the US ship US different tech, like phones. Meanwhile, Japan and Germany sell us heavy machinery. All 4 of these nations also manufacture cars and are the vehicle production giants. Think Mercedes and Volkswagen in Germany, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, and Suzuki in Japan, and so on. So, where does that leave us? Victoria's is doing great in its industries in the post-COVID times. Exports are higher than pre-COVID levels. Education is thriving again, and the state continues to lead in food, fibre, and innovation. But a few challenges remain, like trade deficits and infrastructure gaps. Addressing those will be our key to Victoria's continued long-term economic success.